Alright, hi there. Hopefully, I've got this thing mounted to the end of a boom on my handlebars on my bike, so hopefully, and then I've cranked up the video stabilization, so hopefully you're not getting seasick as this camera is bouncing around. It's funny, every time I post a video where I say that France is better than the US in some way or another, I get a bunch of French people that tell me, oh no, France is just as bad, if not worse. But what I've heard is that the French are, have a reputation for being self-critical and maybe a bit pessimistic too. My personal belief is that human nature is pretty much a constant anywhere you go in the world. That being said, it can be influenced by culture, history, physical environment, and so on. Oh, and let me not forget politics also. By the way, I'm riding on our very pleasant riverside bicycle path. Grenoble has a reputation for being a great biking city. For the cruisers like me, the city of Grenoble has a reputation for being the flattest city in France, which is a bit ironic since it's the gateway to the Alps. It has an extensive network of bike paths and bike lanes all over the city. But you know, I've really noticed that everywhere I go in France, there's a real push to build bike lanes and dedicated bike paths. When we were in Molliet's Aima, for example, it's called Molliet's Aima, they had this over on the Atlantic coast. From the year prior, they had taken the main road to the beach and cut it in half. It was a road dedicated to cars, and it had a bike lane on each side. You know, your typical kind of road that way. But they had cut the road in half, created a center divider, and dedicated one half the road to bicycles, and and cars ended up with half the width that they previously had, which I love. By the way, random fact, it is December 1st, 2025, on a not overly cold day. Pretty right where it should be, I guess. It's a mid to high 30s in Fahrenheit. So anyway, getting back on the topic, yeah, so a lot of those things where I say, you know, France is better in a certain area than the US, and French people say, oh no, it's terrible here too, here being France. You know, it's a matter of degree. and yeah, you know, some of these elements exist, some negative elements exist in France too, but in our experience, they just have not made as much twisted or distorted society as much here as it has in the US. I'd also say that France's history is different from the US's, so and I think that has profoundly influenced you know, society here, obviously. I should probably not video as I'm going through traffic. It's a little distracting. So here in urban France, but I'm going to say actually it counts for this country as well, you just see people out in public more, and there seem to be like more public facilities. You know, one of the sort of basic things I see a lot of is, you know, public benches everywhere for people to sit, a lot of public parks. And yeah, we have them in the US too, although we've had to get rid of a lot of the benches because they become beds for homeless people. God forbid homeless people should have a place to sleep, right? And anyway, but the thinking is there that they aren't available for park goers to use. And at least here in Grenoble, there's not nearly the homeless problem there is where I came from in San Diego, California. And you know, when we first came to France, one of the things that really impressed my wife was how many elderly people, I guess that's me now, elderly people, even older than me, quite a bit older in fact, like in their 80s type of elderly people, were outside enjoying parks, talking to each other, walking, shopping at the little markets. And that really affected some because she feels that the American lifestyle has really physically injured her parents, who are in your typical car-oriented suburb, and you don't have to drive to go anywhere, and don't get as much sort of passive exercise as a result of that. And add to that the American gluttonous and unhealthy diet, and has had some impacts on her, you know, significant impacts on her loved ones. So there's a lot of things that exist here that also exist in the US, but just seem to be more of here. And a lot of urban planners would tell you that's because the density of the cities here facilitates better facilities. Love to use those double meaning double words. Anyway, just see a lot of little playgrounds for kids, a lot of parks, a lot of benches, a lot of plazas, a lot of schools, a lot of recreation facilities, sort of municipal recreation facilities. It seems like every little village has an elaborate, beautiful sporting complex. I have also met a lot of French people who express their admiration for Americans' entrepreneurial spirit, for Americans' openness, willing to talk about their work, even how much they make at work, and that sort of thing. And they decry that the French are very closed about that. Another criticism that I hear among some French, not all, is that at the workplace there's a don't rock the boat mentality. Don't work extra or do extra or stay later, that kind of a thing. And you know, on the surface, you know, as American, and actually when I used to hear that, I heard that same thing, you know, what is it now, 40 years ago? You know, about from Australians, about Australians versus Americans. But I think what gets lost in that is what I believe is like a resistance to being exploited. Because once it becomes all about whoever stays the latest and works the hardest, I mean, America is a, you know, once it becomes that, it sort of just plays to the benefit of the owners of the company rather than the workers. And America is a very kind of winners take all mentality, and rather than sort of a team mentality, although they'll use that word teamwork sometimes when it serves their interests in a company. And you know, the reality is there's a lot more losers than there are winners in American society. So I personally like the fact that there's a resistance. You know, you give your employer his 7 hours, his 8 hours, whatever, and then you fight for your you draw the line, so to speak, and you don't let the system, the capitalistic system, take over your entire life and rob your family of that time. Another thing that's almost comical to us Americans in France is the almost innocence an innocence or infant stage of capitalism that France seems to be compared to the US sometimes. And I'll give you a few examples of that. The first is like real estate ads. You know, in America, a real estate, somebody's selling the house, they're gonna have it completely staged, completely professionally photographed. You just never see a person sell their house with photos that have been taken on their cell phone. But here in France, in my experience, that's been the norm. Yeah, there's some outfits that do stage and some that do it professionally, but I've seen even real estate agents post ads for homes that they're selling where it's obviously been shot with their here, look at a little bridge here I gotta go over. Don't want to fall into it. Anyway, there we go. Let's see, here comes some bumps here, everybody. Move the camera out of the whack. Okay, yeah, so they haven't even tidied it up much. There's like clothes strewn around, clutter on the kitchen counters, that kind of thing. So it's honest, and but it shows kind of everything in the US is so hyper capitalized and evolved to such a commercialized, sophisticated stage of selling that you just don't see that sort of thing. Another example, I think, is sometimes we go to a ski station. We call them ski stations here in the US. We call them ski resort or ski areas. The prices in the restaurants are the same or not much more than you find in town. And you're like scratching your head as an American going, don't they know they have a captured audience here? A captured customer? They can just jack the prices and really stick it to the consumer, gouge, you know, and so it's kind of something we're not used to as an Americans. And then the price of drinks in restaurants in the US, you know, this is a big profit center. The restaurants have learned that they make the real profits on alcohol because, you know, adults are just programmed, most are, to have some alcohol with their food. They can't think of having a dinner without a beer or wine. So, you know, a typical glass of wine, at least in San Diego at a restaurant, when I left 5 years ago, and I think it's more now, would be, you know, $12, $15, $18 for a glass of wine. You know, the food itself was, you know, pretty similar in cost, but the wine just really drove the price up on the bill, and then you got to pay 20% tip on top of that. Yeah, it got pretty expensive. That was Grenoble's 1968 Winter Olympic, kind of I think it was the main parade grounds and also the speed skating rink. And it is a, you know, it's now sort of a concrete oval, very well used on a nice sunny day on the weekend. You will just see you know, a couple hundred people, families with all sorts of different, you know, different uses. Everybody else, people on skateboards, people on classic roller skates, people on blades. Is it blades? No, what do they call it? Inline skating. People on bikes, and then there's that little inner rink where people are doing either playing kind of soccer or roller hockey. And yeah, it's like headed to American, it's got graffiti all over it. It's looking pretty cracked and beat up, and you'd think, oh, that place is sort of abandoned. But here in France, there's less focus on glitz and more focus on just, you know, use, as the actual practical usage. I don't know if this is going to factor in so much, this next item, but you know, we've lived here for 5 years and I still don't own a car here. Back in the US, we had 5 cars in our family at the highest car ownership stage. I mean, for a family of 4, we had 5 cars. We had the minivan, we had Sam's everyday sport Jetta station wagon car. We had my Toyota Land Cruiser, which was sort of our mountain car, you know, for going up to the snow and going camping and that sort of thing, and long road trips. And then we had 2 electric smart cars, because we had solar panels and we could charge up the cars using the solar electricity that we had, and we kind of got a deal on them. So we had 2 of those for just jetting around on errands and that sort of thing. So here, 0 cars. But what we do, and I drive quite a bit actually. Don't have to drive for my daily, you know, routine. I'm not commuting, but we do go quite a bit to the mountains. And then when we're at the beach all summer, we there's no public transportation. There is, but it's, you know, pretty weak. So you need a car there. So we have that for 2 months. So what we're using is a car share, a very robust car share system called City's Car. They have very nice new cars, and they're parked everywhere through the city. And then the city's network is in most of the major cities of France. So yeah, you can pick one up in different cities when you take the train somewhere and then get one in another city. So you know, and that I mean, you pay a membership fee every month, and then you pay a rate based on mileage and amount of time that you use it. And if you have it long term, they give you a sort of discounted rate, but it includes gas. Each car has a gas card in it. It includes insurance, and of course they do all the maintenance. So you know, it works out. It works out. I think it wouldn't work out if I drove every single day, but the amount we drive, it does work out. So now for the grand finale. What is that one thing that I mentioned in title? That one thing that we didn't expect, didn't really, well, even had a hard time sort of putting our finger on it, but it is just a general sense that in France, compared to the US, France, the ratio between emphasis on people versus emphasis on profit favors people, at least more than it does in the US, and enough so that it's palpable when you come to France, sometimes in very sort of subtle ways, sometimes not so subtle. But when you think about it, a country, the US I'm talking about, that is the only country in the world where there's such a thing as a medical, or at least the only G20 country that has medical bankruptcies, that doesn't provide health care as a right to its own citizens, that is the richest country in the world, and yet has homeless more than the poorest country in the world. A country that has more prisoners, both in absolute terms and per capita, than any country in the world. A country that has the greatest inequality, the highest number of billionaires versus the percentage of people living in poverty more than anywhere in the world. Now that's not an official statistic, but based on the number of billionaires and the number of poor people, I believe that to be true. The super wealthy have so much power, and they can never see beyond their own desires. It's a cool little passageway from Hypercentre to the Jardin de Ville. Jardin de Ville. Ville? I don't know. I'm not sure how to pronounce city as compared to life. Life is V, and city is V. You see just a little bit of a Y-ish, Y sound, double L. It's kind of pronounced like a Y. So yeah, France has a rapacious billionaire problem also. But I don't notice that they have quite fucked up society, excuse my language, as much as they have in the US. Lord, I'm going on. It was supposed to be more positive. Yeah, so anyway, to finish it. So to summarize, to an American, maybe not a French person who has seen the country in better shape in the past, or at least that's what I hear all the time. To an American, there's more of an emphasis on people versus profits, and that to us has been the number one thing we like best about France. Oh, and another example is most of the museums are free. Museums that would cost anywhere between $15 and $25 in the US for a day pass here are free. And in Grenoble, even its biggest, most fancy museums are that way, and there's just more of them. They're everywhere. And I was checking on the internet this morning. Even France's most well-known museum, the Louvre. No, it's not free, but it costs about, for a day pass, it costs about the same as, or even a little bit less than your average small museum in France. What am I saying? Excuse me, it costs, in San Diego, it costs the same or a little bit less than your average small museum in San Diego, where I hail from. Here we have the Pont Saint Laurent, so we're going over to the Saint Laurent neighborhood on the other side of the Isère River. Kind of biking aimlessly while I'm talking. If you've watched other videos, you've seen this stuff. City, Grenoble, people in France call Grenoble a small town, but compared to U.S. cities, it would rank as a mid-sized city, particularly the urban density. is quite impressive to an American. Something I think along the lines of a San Francisco. Here there's a major art museum, there's a archaeological museum. Right here in the Saint Laurent neighborhood, there's a museum to the resistance in France. There's another museum that just, oh my God, there's, celebrates the sort of the, I don't know what you call it, the museum, the anthropology type of a museum or the cultural museum. There are perhaps a dozen or more museums here in Grenoble that for a town that's, for a city that's not that big, population of 150,000 in the downtown area, in the actual city area, not the greater metropolitan area. Greater metropolitan area is about 500,000, but there's more museums out in the greater metropolitan area also. Another example is, I should probably get off this rough part here. Okay, another example is recreation. Way less expensive than in the US. Ski stations run anywhere from $10 to, at the very, very top, maybe 80, excuse me, euros. To the very, very top, maybe being 80 euros. More typically, the big resorts are at about 50 or 60 euros for an undiscounted day pass. In the US, the smallest resorts are, what now, 100 or more, and the bigger resorts are 300. So, big difference. And that applies to everything. Recreation. We were a member of a sailing club back in Southern California, and it was considered one of the less expensive ones. There was a $2,500 initiation fee, and then about $150 a month to be a member. Here, we're a member of a sailing club. When I say club, it has the physical facilities, just like the one in Southern California, for about $200 for the whole family, per year, and no initiation fee. Now, the one here is quite a bit more quaint, a little, not quite as fancy in its facilities. But on the other hand, the one in Southern California, for that $150 a month, you had to bring your own boat. You didn't have, there was no free usage of boats or included usage. The one here in France, the usage of boats, stand-up paddle boards, canoes, all of it is included in the membership. I mean, if you're one of the increasingly diminishing group of people who earn money or have wealth such that expenditure is not a real issue, and you value luxury, whether it's your car, your home, and material luxury in particular, then the US is probably for you. But if you're somebody who enjoys being outside of their house, mixing in public, being in public spaces, outdoor recreation, feeling more part of a community or a city, then definitely France is much better at that than the US. Anyway, at this point I feel like I'm rambling, so time to end the video. Thanks for listening if you've made it this far. Hey, last minute edit. As I just got another telephone solicitor call. One place where France is, maybe even past the US in commercialism and capitalism, is in telephone solicitation. I don't know, man, I get like 3 or 4 calls a day, unwanted commercial calls a day.